Rama asked, "Lord, do ghosts exist? What do they look like, and what do they do?" Vasistha replied, "O Ram, ghosts do exist in this world. I shall now tell you what they are and what they do. Surely he who does not deal with the subject when requested to do so is not a worthy teacher." What a worthy teacher might say it's a stupid question, and don't ask such stupid questions. But it's actually quite an important question given the context. And the context is looking at how we discriminate between what is real and what is unreal. Sometimes we call it discriminating between what is real and what is imaginary, with the loaded assumption that what is imaginary is somehow not real and therefore of lesser importance. This has a huge existential implication for us. It has a huge impact, a huge implication for how we relate to our own inner world. It impoverishes it basically, and we need to reclaim it. But we shouldn't reclaim it at the expense of not being able to relate to a consensual reality, what we might call the scientific reality. Now, many of us might think we're very rational individuals, that we don't have any particularly stupid beliefs, and we might quite like what science does. We might be impressed by technology. But what about the scientist who is also religious? Or perhaps there are even scientists who believe in ghosts. Is a belief in ghosts unscientific? Is it unscientific to acknowledge dimensions beyond the conventional understanding, or beyond the scientific understanding? Science is a particular spirit of inquiry, but it's also about being able to duplicate experimental results. This is the bedrock of science. You can come up with theories as much as you like, but if something's to be scientifically proven, then it has to be experimentally verified, and an experiment is something which needs to be repeatable. In other words, if you set up certain conditions, then this particular result will always follow. That's the bedrock of science, of practical science. And this is only going to work if you assume that the world is essentially mechanical. It's a very mechanical way of looking at things. But in pursuing this avenue of inquiry, science gets into some very abstract territory, and reality becomes about probabilities. Probabilities are in themselves mechanical, but not quite as solid as we normally think of mechanics to be. And mathematics, which underpins modern science, modern physics and understanding, certainly isn't solid, it's very abstract. Although there are rules of thought in mathematics which we might describe as mechanical. Well, there have been attempts to prove that they're mechanical, but I don't think these attempts have quite established that. But basically the rules of mathematics reflect an underlying cohesion or cohesiveness in what is going on in the total picture. So the point I'm making is we should be able to relate to different modes of inquiry, different modes of reality, without dismissing one over the other. So it's like the scientist who is religious. The scientist can be perfectly objective and be a very successful scientist, and yet they might be a Muslim or a Catholic or something like that. And that side of them will be at least as important to them as their scientific side. Somehow they manage to move between them both. And the overall result, if you can do this, is enriching. It's enriching. It's not contradictory, it's just different modes. And you shouldn't try to reconcile the religious mode with the scientific mode. They're two different modes. But the one thing they've got in common is they're both modes of inquiry. They're both the results of inquiring into things at different levels. And this is what we do with the imagination. We inquire into it at a different level. We don't inquire into it and try and fit it into the scientific framework. We inquire into it in its own terms, and we don't dismiss it as unscientific or unreal. We don't dismiss the imagination as unreal. This is the point. But if you're concerned about giving the imagination reality, then what I'll say is that we should be able to still relate to the scientific mode of inquiry. You don't confuse them. Don't confuse them. This is the point. Personally, I'm all for science and all for the scientific method of inquiry. We need this. We need this way of thinking. It's what's brought about so much improvement in the world. Some people would say it's brought about a lot of bad stuff as well, but there's clearly no doubt that we're so much better off, at least physically and material, than our ancestors were. So I'm completely in support of people like Richard Dawkins, who stresses the importance of rational thinking. It's absolutely essential. At the same time, I strongly support the reality of the imagination. But what I don't support is trying to make that reality scientific. They're completely different stories. There's no need to cross them over. And this is what you often find about people who are into things like the study of ghosts and astral projection and things. They want to bring it into the scientific arena. If they can do that, fine. But if they can't do it, then it does not invalidate the phenomenon. It's just not a scientific phenomenon, and we should accept that. I don't see any need to make it a scientific phenomenon, because it somehow is assuming that the imagination has got a lower status than the scientific story. So people that are trying to bring imaginative phenomena into the realm of scientific phenomena are actually exercising that prejudice. They're actually subscribing to the idea that scientific thinking is more important than the reality of the imagination, that the imagination is somehow unreal. So this is a very basic discrimination, which, if we're going to pursue inquiry, we need to look into and go beyond. So I haven't really got round to talking about ghosts just yet. I think that will have to wait till the next video.